a deeply sorrowful and emotional announcement, the Vatican officially confirmed that Pope Francis, the spiritual leader of billions of Catholics around the world, passed away on April 21, 2025, at the age of 88. He was not only a religious leader but also a symbol of compassion, peace, and boundless love. But behind these words of mourning lies the story of a man who dedicated his entire life to serving God and humanity, bringing profound changes to the Catholic Church and the world. Join us in this video to explore the meaningful life, struggles, and sacrifices of Pope Francis, and to gain a deeper understanding of the immense legacy he leaves behind for mankind. His actions will forever live on in our hearts. Pope Francis passes away, a legacy of devotion and sacrifice. On the morning of April 21, 2025, the Vatican officially announced the passing of Pope Francis, who had led the Catholic Church for over a decade. At the age of 88, the Holy Father passed away at 7:35 a.m., marking the end of an era of profound change and challenge, but also one filled with immense contributions to the Church and the world. In a statement released via video, Cardinal Kevin Farrell, the Bishop of Rome, expressed his deep sorrow. "Dear brothers and sisters, with profound sadness, I must announce the passing of Pope Francis. He has returned to the Father." These were the opening words of the moving video broadcasted worldwide, reminding us of the immense sacrifices and lifelong service Pope Francis gave to God and his Church. Born Jorge Mario Bergoglio, Pope Francis was elected as the 266th Pope of the Catholic Church on March 13, 2013, in a historic moment when he became the first Pope from Latin America, as well as the first to take the name Francis. From the very beginning of his papacy, he displayed a unique, humble leadership style, with a particular focus on the poor and marginalized, the very ones society often overlooks and casts aside. Pope Francis dedicated his life to serving God and elevating the values of unity and love in the global community. A heartfelt farewell. The passing of Pope Francis is not only a tremendous loss for the Catholic Church but also for the entire world. He leaves behind an enduring legacy with his humane principles and profound compassion. Those who followed his papacy will always remember the tireless efforts he made in advocating for peace, justice, and love. Throughout his life, Pope Francis worked to exemplify the virtues of forgiveness, charity, and solidarity, serving as a guiding light for millions of Catholics worldwide. His death occurred just one day after he unexpectedly appeared on the central balcony of St. Peter's Basilica to give the Urbi et Orbi blessing to the city of Rome and the world on Easter Sunday. Despite his frail health, Pope Francis made this appearance briefly to deliver a critical message about peace and love, particularly focused on the ongoing conflict in Gaza. Final words of peace. During this year's Easter celebration, Pope Francis was unable to preside over the Easter Mass due to his weakened state. However, with the assistance of a collaborator, he was able to convey an important message. Love conquers hate, light overcomes darkness, and truth triumphs over lies. Forgiveness triumphs over hatred. Evil has not disappeared from history. It will persist until the end of time, but it no longer holds the upper hand. It no longer has power over those who accept the grace of today. These were the final words Pope Francis shared with the world, emphasizing the vital importance of forgiveness, peace, and love in a world marred by conflict. Before his passing, on April 20th, Pope Francis received a visit from U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance in a private meeting at the papal residence. This was the final high-level meeting that Pope Francis had before he passed away the next day. The meeting, described as lasting just a few minutes, was primarily a gesture of goodwill and Easter blessings, health struggles, and a final battle. In his final months, Pope Francis' health deteriorated significantly. On February 14, 2025, he was hospitalized in Rome due to breathing difficulties and was diagnosed with double pneumonia. Doctors noted that due to his age and a previous lung surgery, he was considered a very fragile patient. Despite the repeated reports of his critical condition, Pope Francis showed remarkable resilience, recovering and being discharged from the hospital in late March. However, his health did not fully recover, and his doctors advised him to limit his participation in large gatherings and strenuous activities to allow for rest and recovery. This further underscored his fragile condition in his final days, with the medical team and Pope's collaborators preparing for the inevitable. A life of devotion and legacy. Pope Francis dedicated his entire life to serving God and humanity. His teachings and actions left an indelible mark on the Catholic Church, particularly in his advocacy for the poor, his pursuit of peace, and his efforts to build a more just and compassionate society. He continuously promoted values of love, forgiveness, and unity, and became a beacon of hope for millions around the globe, especially the most vulnerable and those marginalized by society. Pope Francis was a leader of unparalleled stature, and his influence reached far beyond the confines of the Catholic Church. His words and actions inspired millions, and he became a symbol of humility, compassion, and unwavering faith in God's love. His legacy is one of profound impact, a reminder of the importance of kindness, understanding, and devotion to those in need. Conclusion: the lasting legacy of Pope Francis. The passing of Pope Francis on April 21, 2025, is a monumental loss not only for the Catholic Church but for the entire world. His departure leaves an irreplaceable void, a silence that resonates deeply across the globe, touching the hearts of people from all walks of life. Pope Francis was not simply a spiritual leader of the Catholic faith. He was a guiding light, a symbol of hope, and an unwavering voice for justice, peace, and the most marginalized among us. His influence extended beyond the religious realm, transcending geographical and cultural boundaries, inspiring millions with his profound message of love, compassion, and reconciliation. As we reflect on the life and legacy of Pope Francis, we must recognize that his impact is far-reaching and will be felt for generations to come. His papacy was defined by a relentless commitment to the values of the gospel, values that prioritize the dignity of the human person, the importance of peace, and the power of forgiveness. These principles, which Pope Francis lived out with humility and conviction, will continue to inspire future generations to follow in his footsteps, embracing the same path of love, forgiveness, and peace that he so deeply embodied. At the heart of Pope Francis' message was the idea that love is the most powerful force in the world. In his many speeches and writings, he emphasized that love is not just an emotion or a sentiment, but a call to action, a force that compels us to care for one another, to serve those in need, and to work tirelessly for justice. Whether he was speaking to world leaders, visiting the poor in slums, or comforting the sick in hospitals, Pope Francis' actions were always motivated by a deep and abiding love for all of humanity. His life was a testament to the fact that love is not just a passive feeling, but an active, transformative force that can change the world. Pope Francis also championed the cause of peace, constantly urging both individuals and nations to seek reconciliation rather than conflict. His advocacy for peace was not limited to religious or political dialogues. It was a broader call for the end of violence and the promotion of harmony in all aspects of life. In his encyclicals, speeches, and personal encounters, Pope Francis consistently called on the faithful, and on all people of goodwill, to seek common ground, to build bridges, and to work together for a world where peace is the prevailing reality. His work with various global organizations, his interfaith dialogues, and his outreach to people of different beliefs and cultures all reflected his deep commitment to peace, demonstrating that it is not a passive aspiration but a concrete, active pursuit. Forgiveness was another central theme of Pope Francis' papacy. He repeatedly emphasized that forgiveness is not just a personal act but a societal necessity. In his teachings, he consistently reminded us that to forgive is to free ourselves from the chains of hatred, resentment, and division. In a world often torn by conflict and division, Pope Francis' message of forgiveness was a balm for wounded hearts. His personal example, too, was one of profound forgiveness, as he sought reconciliation with those who had wronged him or the Church. This act of personal and institutional forgiveness was a powerful demonstration of the Christian faith, showing that it is only through forgiveness that we can truly experience healing and peace. Moreover, Pope Francis was a staunch advocate for the poor, the sick, and the oppressed. His deep empathy for those living on the margins of society was evident in every aspect of his papacy. Whether he was visiting refugee camps, advocating for the rights of the homeless, or speaking out against the growing inequality in the world, Pope Francis never wavered in his commitment to those who suffer most. His call for economic justice, his concern for the environment, and his dedication to alleviating the suffering of the poor are all part of the lasting legacy he leaves behind. In his eyes, the poor were not merely subjects of charity but brothers and sisters deserving of dignity, respect, and justice. His example challenges all of us to reconsider how we interact with those less fortunate and to take meaningful steps toward creating a world where justice, equality, and compassion are not just ideals, but realities. Pope Francis' legacy is not just one of faith, but of a life lived with an unwavering commitment to humanity and the values of the gospel. His papacy was a living embodiment of the teachings of Jesus Christ: love, mercy, compassion, and service to others. The path he charted is one that all of us can follow, regardless of our faith, background, or station in life. His leadership was marked by humility, simplicity, and a deep sense of service, and these qualities are what made him such a beloved figure, not only within the church but across the world. His life reminds us that true leadership is not about power or authority, but about serving others and lifting them up, just as Christ did. As we grieve the loss of Pope Francis, we must also celebrate his life and the extraordinary impact he had on the world. His legacy will live on in the countless lives he touched, in the communities he helped build, and in the countless acts of kindness and compassion that continue to be carried out in his name. His example serves as a reminder that each of us has the capacity to make a difference, to live a life of service, and to embody the love and forgiveness that Pope Francis so tirelessly preached. The future will no doubt be shaped by the values Pope Francis championed. His legacy will continue to inspire not only the Catholic faithful but also all people who believe in the power of love, peace, and justice. As the world moves forward, we must all strive to live by the example set by this remarkable man, whose life was a testament to the transformative power of the gospel. In a world that often seems divided and uncertain, Pope Francis reminded us that the greatest strength we can have is the strength to love, forgive, and work for peace. In the end, Pope Francis may have passed away, but his example will live on in the hearts of all who were touched by his teachings, his leadership, and his unwavering commitment to the gospel. His legacy is one that will inspire future generations to embrace a life of compassion, service, and faith. As we continue on our own journeys, let us keep his example before us, always striving to embody the love, peace, and forgiveness that he so powerfully lived. The world is forever changed by his life, and his spirit will continue to guide us as we work to make the world a better place for all.